And I don't think he cared much about talking. He was the kind of director who liked action. And when all the talking was done, he asked the script girl, "Did they get everything?" She said, "Yeah." He said, "Print it." He might have been Hollywood's toughest guy, but Lee Marvin had a serious grudge against Paul Newman. And now we finally know why. Behind all those fake smiles we see on red carpets, these two had some serious bad blood. There was anger, jealousy, and hurt feelings. Marvin didn't hold back when people asked him about Newman, and the real reason he hated him is way more personal than anyone thought. The truth is finally coming out. We all know that when two huge Hollywood stars like Lee Marvin and Paul Newman worked together on a movie, people expected it to be amazing. They teamed up for a 1972 movie called Pocket Money, and everyone thought it would be a huge hit. It was like a modern cowboy movie directed by Stuart Rosenberg, who had made Cool Hand Luke with Newman before. The script was written by Terrence Malick, who later became a really famous director. The movie had a weird, quirky feel to it, and was about two broke cowboys who get mixed up in some shady cattle smuggling across the U.S.-Mexico border. Newman played Jim Kane, a hopeful but always broke cowboy, while Marvin played Leonard, a not-so-smart, clumsy partner who gets caught up in Jim's crazy adventure. Even though both actors were super famous, the movie totally flopped. Critics didn't like it much, saying the story was messy, boring, and all over the place. It barely made any money at movie theaters and quickly disappeared. It became one of those forgotten movies in both actors' careers that nobody talks about. But the biggest disappointment wasn't how badly it did. It was all the drama that happened behind the scenes. According to a guy who wrote about Lee Marvin's life, Dwayne Epstein, Pocket Money became a huge problem for Lee Marvin. He felt like he got tricked by how the movie people handled everything. At first, Marvin thought he and Newman would get equal credit, equal pay, and equal importance in the story. After all, the movie was supposed to be about two main characters who were equally important. Two sides of the same coin, dealing with a really complicated and pointless adventure. But that balance quickly changed. Pocket Money was made by First Artists, a company that Newman helped start along with Barbra Streisand and Sidney Poitier. This company was supposed to give actors more control over their movies. While this let stars like Newman do whatever they wanted artistically, it also meant that Newman had way more power behind the scenes than anyone else. As they kept filming, Marvin started noticing that his character was getting pushed aside, bit by bit. In public and private, Marvin didn't hide how angry he was. Epstein quotes him saying, "At the beginning, we agreed that Newman and I would make the same money and have roles that were just as important. Well, I've never seen things get turned around so much. It was Newman's company that made the film. And when they showed it, Newman had become the only star, and I was nowhere to be found." For Marvin, a guy known for being real and independent, realizing he got pushed to the side was both embarrassing and infuriating. The final version of the movie made it obvious that Newman was now the main focus. All the ads and movie trailers focused mostly on Newman's name and charm, barely mentioning Marvin at all. While Marvin's character Leonard was still in the movie, his scenes got cut down, and his role became just a funny sidekick instead of a real co-star. The advertising campaign also presented Pocket Money as a Paul Newman movie, not something both actors starred in equally. For an actor as good as Marvin, who had just won an Oscar for Cat Ballou and was praised for his work in The Dirty Dozen, and point blank, this felt like a professional insult that really hurt. This wasn't just about his ego. Marvin was proud of his acting skills, and he saw Pocket Money as a chance to try playing a different, more sensitive character than he usually played. Playing Leonard let him try something new beyond the tough guy roles he was known for. But when his role got basically destroyed during editing, the final movie didn't show the team effort he was promised. And of course, there's more to the story. According to several people, including biographer Dwayne Epstein, Marvin went into making this movie thinking he and Newman would get paid the same and have equal screen time. After all, the film was about two weird cowboys. Newman's Jim Kane, a naive, quiet drifter, and Marvin's Leonard, a not-so-bright but nice companion, trying to pull off a bizarre and failed cattle smuggling job across the U.S.-Mexico border. However, as they made the movie, Marvin realized more and more that equal didn't mean what he thought it did, especially when it came to money and power. In a surprisingly honest interview, Marvin said it straight. Newman has it all figured out. I get $1 million. He gets $1 million too. But his million includes $200,000 for expenses. So if that's how we're playing this game, he stopped and shrugged, letting the bitter meaning hang there. While the pay difference on paper was only $200,000, Marvin made it clear that Newman's extra expenses were part of a bigger plan to make sure he came out ahead, not just with money, but with control of the whole project. The truth behind those numbers was more complicated than it seemed at first. Newman's extra $200,000 wasn't just bonus money. It covered costs for his behind-the-scenes work as one of the owners of First Artists, the company that made pocket money. First Artists was started by a small group of Hollywood big shots, Newman, Barbra Streisand, and Sidney Poitier among them, who wanted more creative and financial control over their projects. While this setup gave Newman creative freedom, it also put him way above Marvin when it came to making decisions and having influence. From Marvin's point of view, the supposed equality between them was fake. He thought he signed up to work with an equal partner, but ended up feeling like a hired worker in Newman's show. It wasn't just about the extra money. It was about what that meant. Newman, being a producer, meant he got the final say on editing, marketing, and how the movie was presented. And when pocket money finally came out in theaters, the unfairness was obvious. Posters, trailers, and press stuff focused completely on Paul Newman, while Marvin's name and picture were pushed to the side. To a guy like Lee Marvin, who was tough, proud, and known for his no-nonsense attitude, this was a serious blow. He had built his career as a leading man on his own terms, refusing to play Hollywood games or kiss up to studio politics. Marvin wasn't just a star. He represented independence in an industry controlled by egos and manipulation. But on pocket money, he suddenly found himself in a situation he couldn't control. And his frustration went really deep. In several interviews after the film came out, Marvin didn't just criticize the unfairness in pay, screen time, and influence. He made it clear that there was no personal connection between them at all. And he didn't try to be nice about it. In Marvin's own words, "I never talked to Newman in my life." That harsh comment wasn't just a casual remark. It was Marvin's way of drawing a clear line between them, both professionally and personally. He went into more detail with a specific story, something that happened that stuck with him, and seemed to show everything he found disgusting about Newman. The only time he could remember having a conversation with Newman outside of work happened, ironically, not on the movie set, but on Park Avenue. It was during that brief moment that Marvin saw behavior that really disturbed him. So much that he would tell the story years later with obvious disgust. According to Marvin, a 15-year-old girl came up to them, a young fan who politely asked Paul Newman for an autograph. It was a harmless request, something almost every actor as famous as Newman had dealt with countless times. But Newman, instead of saying yes or politely saying no, brushed her off with a sarcastic offer. "I don't give autographs, but I'll buy you a beer." Shocked, Marvin felt he had to step in. "Paul," he told him, "she's only 15. Newman supposedly replied with complete indifference, "I don't give a damn." The moment stunned Marvin, Not just because of the bad language or how inappropriate the joke was, but because of what it showed. About Newman's attitude. To Marvin, this wasn't just a bad joke or a moment of poor judgment. It showed a deeper lack of respect for decency, humility, and human connection, qualities that Marvin, despite his own rough personality, clearly cared about. When he shared that story later in life, Marvin used it like a lesson, a clear example of how he saw Newman's character underneath the polished, blue-eyed Hollywood image. In telling that story again, Marvin wasn't just complaining about something that happened long ago. He was making a point about Newman being disconnected from reality, from ordinary people, and from any sense of social responsibility. To Marvin, a man who had lived through war, hard work, and the brutal Hollywood casting system, the casual cruelty of Newman's comment showed an arrogance he couldn't stand. This moment also added another layer to Marvin's already boiling anger. Over pocket money, besides being cheated financially and minimized creatively, Marvin now saw himself as being personally and morally separated from his co-star. Newman's role as both actor and producer on the project had already tipped the scales of power in his favor, but this interaction suggested something even deeper, that Marvin had never been working alongside a partner, but rather with a man he neither liked nor respected. What made the story especially powerful was that it didn't involve a big confrontation or explosive argument. There was no yelling, no scene, just a few cold words in a brief exchange and a bitter memory that Marvin never forgot. It's telling that when thinking about Newman, Marvin didn't mention any friendship, private jokes, or even professional respect. All he could remember, all he was willing to remember, was this one chilling example of Newman's disregard for others. While Marvin himself was no stranger to rough behavior or a hard lifestyle, famously battling alcoholism and embracing a rugged, anti-glamour personality, he had a personal code of honor, especially when it came to honesty and respect. In his view, Newman broke that code, not just in the power games of their shared film, but in how he treated people, even young fans. For Marvin, that was unforgivable. Looking back on the experience, Marvin offered a cold, cutting summary. I think it shows. With Newman, it shows. That comment, surprisingly short, cut straight to the heart of Marvin's complaint. It wasn't just about pay differences, though those were definitely real. And it wasn't only about the lack of friendship. Marvin had bluntly stated, "I never talked to Newman in my life." What Marvin really meant was this: the unfairness, the anger, the lack of trust, and mutual respect. All of it bled into the film itself. Marvin believed audiences could feel it. They might not know the behind-the-scenes politics or the exact details of his contract, but he was certain that viewers sensed something was wrong. On paper, pocket money should have worked. The idea was simple but promising. Two broke cowboys, Newman's Jim Kane, a soft-spoken dreamer, and Marvin's Leonard, a slow-witted but loyal companion, go on a cross-border cattle run that turns into confusion and comedy. The setup was built for a buddy dynamic, a clash of personalities that could create humor, chaos, and charm. But Marvin saw no such magic when the film was finished. Instead of a lively back and forth between equals, the movie revolved almost entirely around Newman. Marvin's character, once planned as a co-lead, had been pushed to the edges, both in the script and in the editing room. Marvin wasn't just supporting Newman on screen. He was propping up a project that had clearly been designed to serve Newman's image and ego. And to Marvin, that wasn't just unfair. It was artistically dishonest. From the moment Pocket Money was released, critics and audiences alike noticed the film's strange emptiness. The chemistry between the leads felt forced, the pacing slow, and the tone unsure. It wasn't a disaster, but it lacked the spark audiences expected from two Academy Award-winning actors. Marvin insisted this wasn't a coincidence. The lack of emotional connection between the characters reflected the lack of connection between the men who played them. There was no brotherhood, no backstory of shared trust, just two actors showing up to do completely different jobs under the same movie title. Thinking about the film, Marvin started with a casual shrug. I don't know. I don't have much to talk to him about. That one sentence said everything. Unlike many co-stars who remember warm times of shared rehearsals, bonding experiences, or even playful competition, Marvin gave no hint that such a relationship ever existed with Newman. There was no warmth, no friendship, just the bare minimum of professional necessity. They worked together, but they did not connect. Marvin went on to explain why he agreed to do Pocket Money in the first place. I did the picture because he was right, and I was right. The picture is about how our cattle dealings lead to our eventual downfall. On the surface, this could be read as a simple endorsement of the script's idea, a quirky, tragic comic western about two small-time cowboys caught up in shady cross-border cattle smuggling. But underneath Marvin's words was a tone of practicality, not passion. He was basically saying, we both thought it was a good idea at the time. This wasn't a tale of inspiration or artistic calling. Marvin wasn't drawn to the project because of its director, Stuart Rosenberg, the screenwriter, a young Terrence Malick, or even the opportunity to work with Newman, one of the most bankable stars of the era. Instead, it was simply a good fit. A job that made sense for both men at that particular point in their careers. And yet, the lack of emotional investment from Marvin's side seeped into every word he said about the film looking back. Unlike Newman, who had a personal stake in the project through his involvement with the production company First Artists, Marvin approached the job with the same workmanlike professionalism he applied to most of his roles. But professionalism didn't equal enthusiasm. While Marvin may have initially seen the role of Leonard, the slow-witted but likable cowboy sidekick, as a chance to break away from his usual tough guy image, the way the film was made, particularly Newman's overwhelming control, left Marvin disappointed and emotionally disconnected. That disconnection wasn't just personal. It affected how Marvin viewed the final product. He believed the emotional emptiness between the actors translated onto the screen, subtly undermining the chemistry and tone the story needed. In a film like Pocket Money, where success depends on the dynamic between its two leads, a lack of genuine connection can't be faked. Marvin's discomfort with Newman's off-screen influence and behavior, combined with their lack of meaningful conversation or friendship, created an atmosphere of tension that, according to Marvin, audiences could sense even if they didn't know the details. His earlier statement, I think it shows, with Newman, it shows, echoes through his later comments. What began as a seemingly cooperative agreement to work on a promising script had, by the time the film was completed, turned into a case study in creative misalignment. Even though both men saw the potential in the project, they approached it from fundamentally different places. Newman, the producer star, held the reins creatively and financially. Marvin, despite being an Oscar-winning actor with huge influence, found himself playing a secondary role in a production that increasingly prioritized Newman's image and story voice. What do you think about the conflict between Paul Newman and Lee Marvin? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this, and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.